for it, actually.
If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
We are back. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News, where we deliver the truth without the filter. In these uncertain times when legacy media feeds Americans nothing but propaganda and half-truths, we stand firm in our commitment to provide you with the information that matters, information the establishment doesn't want you to have. We're grateful to have you with us here today, especially those who value God, family, and country. Our community is built on these bedrock principles of self-reliance, personal liberty, and the constitutional values our forefathers fought and died for. So whether you're listening from your homestead, during your commute, or at your bug out location, while running drills, I know you're doing them, Mike Sterling. I know you're amongst friends here. I'm your host, Chris Heaven, CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined today by our special guest, Sam Anthony, below me here. Sam brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion. Looking forward to tapping into that wisdom as we dig in today's topic. And of course, to the side of me here, my good friend, Jeff MD, our in-house CIA operative, aka 007. Sam, you've been on before, but do me a favor and give us the 30-second elevator introduction to Sam Anthony, please.
I run a hyper local news platform called Your News. It's like the local news website in every city in America with USA Today wrapped around it. We allow the public to interact and share in the narrative. And in essence, we put the power of the press in the hands of the people. Monetization model for news reporters. We just hit 710 in the last 5 months. Okay, that's a lot. We can drill down right down to a zip code. So we publish content to a city, county, market, state, regional, and national. It's by all the different topics. So ultimately, at the end of the day, what I do will replace the legacy media.
It's awesome. Let me just draw a parallel as I see it for our audience, Sam, and correct me if I make any mistakes.
Sure.
But if you take into consideration what we do at Survival Dispatch News, we speak on macro topics that affect the entire country, if not the entire world. And what Sam has brought to the marketplace is a whole bunch of Survival Dispatch News-like people, but delivering news at the local level, at your zip code level or the area that you're covered. What do they call for TV audiences again, Sam? I can't remember the name of them. DMA or something like that?
Designated market area, right.
Yeah. It's phenomenal as far as the quality of the local news content that you can get from somebody like us who we're not bought and paid for, right? We don't have a dog in the hunt like the legacy media does, and neither do your 700 plus reporters now, essentially.
Well, no, because I'm a platform. So how could I possibly know what happened at the city council meeting in any city in America? I could never know it, right? So, it's a free speech platform. Many of the content creators are people that are either like student journalists that are just coming out of school that have nowhere to go. There are people that, were part of the downsizing of the legacy media. And Jeff and Chris, I got to tell you something. I don't think I said this the last time I was on, but I talk to a lot of journalists, people that are actually in the business. And the stories they tell me, I couldn't even believe. Like I thought, how could this even be possible? So some woman called me from, I think it was Tampa, and she worked for a paper there. She said, I'm an investigative journalist. I've been doing this forever. And all I have is integrity. And she said, when I put up a story, it is spot on factual. And the problem I'm having with the newspaper I work for is when I bring the article, I might have worked on it for a year, and I bring this to the editor. There's something called a review board. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I never did. So I brought this up to Alex Newman. I go, is that true? So there's something called a review board where you don't get to talk to the people. You just give them the work, and then they decide whether something's going to run or not. And she said, it could be that it's somebody's relative, it's a friend of somebody, it's a big advertiser. So they could just nix the story. Now, we all saw it with Amy Robach with the Jeffrey Epstein thing, right? Where that was going to air that day, and all of a sudden somebody made a phone call and it was nixed.
Yep.
Okay. But here's what Alex Newman said, because I was on with Alex Newman and Sarah Westall. I go, Alex, is that true? He goes, are you kidding? It's even worse. Because you work for the paper, they could take your article, completely change it, and make it the opposite.
Yeah.
It's not yours, it's theirs.
We're acquainted with Sarah as well. She's awesome. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. There's so many reasons not to trust legacy media.
Oh.
I'll just quickly say, just for argument's sake, because I see we've got some new followers in here. 1980, there were over 600 independently owned news organizations in the country. And now you have 6 mega corporations like BlackRock and Vanguard that own 99% of them. And like I mentioned before we went live, I used to refer to legacy media or mainstream media at the time as infotainment, but today it's straight up propagandatainment. So anyway, we're in our new format now where we've tightened things up to an hour. So today we're going to dive into ICE's progress in capturing criminal aliens, deporting them with no baloney, just what the facts are and what you need to know. And, our southern border is still in crisis to a certain extent with, despite President Trump's efforts, because we still have some pretty significant drugs coming across the border. We don't have the manpower there that we need. And of course, our friend Tom Holman, who's been on Survival Dispatch News a few times, is working 24/7 to correct that. But before we jump into that, a couple quick announcements. Number one, John Wheaton and I will be at WAFT on Tuesday. So this is the premier training facility for private individuals in the entire world. So WOFT.com. Grant Cardone frequently rents the facility. It's $30,000 a day to rent the facility. Or if you're an individual, it's $3,000 a day to train there. And Philip DePino, the owner, is a friend of mine. We're going to be there on Tuesday filming a whole bunch of new content, and it's going to be live fire home defense firearm stuff. So it's going to build off what we did last week in Georgia. Pilgrim James is going to be there from Pilgrim Ammunition. Hopefully Lieutenant Dan's going to be on as well, the former lead developer of Call of Duty and Navy SEAL candidate. And also, in order to get around people not being notified when we publish content, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, go to our Substack and sign up for a free account. We're going to start a new email every Saturday called the Survival Dispatch Watch Guide. And it's going to have links to every single thing we've published for the week up until that point. And it'll have links to every platform. For example, this recording rate, or this live, I should say, is being blasted out to 9 different platforms. So it'll be in the Watch Guide with 9 links below it. But before we do that, we usually have a couple headline news stories. And I've condensed it down to 1 for tonight. And the video is a little bit on the long side for what I prefer to play, but I'm going to play most of it. It's a pretty powerful video on what happens when pro-choice women watch an abortion. This video shows, a handful of pro-choice women watching actual abortion footage for the first time. And the reactions range from shock to tears as they witness the reality of the procedure that they've supported for all these years. And many express regret and a change of heart after watching the graphic truth of what abortion, actually involves. And the video concludes with statistics regarding abortion procedures and encourages viewers to reconsider their stance if they're pro-choice. So I'm going to pull that up right now. And I want to get input from both you, Jeff, and Sam as well after we play this video.
Five abortions before she decided to keep me.
I always kind of thought it was just like a little seed.
I will be against abortion for sure, 100%.
And if we don't feel like it or we don't have enough money for it, any circumstance should not be anybody else's choice but that person.
I know that certain circumstances, make you have to do that. So
pro-choice, pro-life, or neither? pro-choice. I do know that there are some people who do believe in it, and I don't really want to put my opinions onto them.
Everybody has a choice.
So you do believe that it's a baby in the womb?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it, but yeah, it's a tough one.
It's okay if you don't know.
Yeah, I don't really, yeah, you got me there. It's like, I don't know.
In the economy we live in, it's better to be safe than sorry. It's better late than never to get rid of it and, maybe try again later.
Do you think there should be any restrictions on abortion, such as only allowing them in the first 3 months of pregnancy?
I believe all the way up until birth.
Do you know anything about how an abortion is performed?
I don't.
This is just more about the procedure from a woman who's really familiar with them.
Right, and then they have the product conception room at Planned.
That's a terrible way. I didn't know that that's how babies have to, or how you get an abortion. Do we have anything else instead of having to use the clamps to cut up the baby and stuff?
Yeah, I didn't know that that's how they performed abortions. Very eye-opening.
I'm sorry, you all right?
I'm fine. My mom went through 5 abortions before she decided to keep me. That's sad. That's a life, and they're destroying, and they haven't even got a chance to the baby to see what's life all about. They have no choice. The babies,
Say information in the video helps change your mind or solidify a stance about abortion.
Yes. I feel like that video should be shown everywhere.
I always kind of thought it was just a little seed that they kind of scope out. It's really sad to watch the body parts get pulled off of the baby one by one.
I lost our second child. It's a life. It's a life.
I think if you're far along to just give birth, you might as well give birth.
It's not like a designer handbag that you maybe I'll keep it or not.
You might find that you're in a better circumstance to take care of the kid, or, give it to somebody who is in a better circumstance to take care of it. And don't just kind of take a life that hasn't got the chance to develop yet. Very eye-opening.
Would you consider yourself strongly pro-life now?
Yes. Now that they're watching that video, my opinion changed 100%. Now I'm going to educate my friends, and I will be against abortion for sure, 100%.
That's a shocking video. You can go to whatisabortion.com and watch the video that girl showed to the other women. Jeff, I'd like to hear your input on this first.
Yeah, it's amazing how people can be so rabidly in support of something they know absolutely nothing about. They'll march and protest and pontificate, but when you say, what is an abortion, what does it entail, what does it look like, they have no freaking clue. And it's just the ignorance of people. Now, if you can sit there and watch that video and see and still be fine with it, teach his own. I can't. But don't pretend you know what's going on when you have no clue what's going on.
Yeah, well said, Jeff. I will tell our audience that up until Governor Northam in Virginia started allowing these, not just late term, but post-birth abortions.
Yeah.
That's what tweaked me. The post-birth abortion, that's murder. And even in late term, it is murder. So it wasn't a topic that I didn't care about, but it wasn't a topic that was at the top of my list. And now it's important to me because this is downright evil. It's murder. Sam, curious to hear what your thoughts are on this.
Well, I'm sure glad you didn't show us that video. Okay, that's for sure. But look, it's always easy to form judgment on something you have absolutely no idea. But I'm sure when these women, look, all of them were for it, and all of a sudden at the end, after watching it, they were enlightened to what really takes place. They weren't. So once you get educated on something, it changes your mind. So I get it. I think everybody needs to be able to watch this stuff. And like Jeff said, after you watch it, if you're still willing to do it, by all means,
Well, we wouldn't play something like that regardless. But even if we did, Sam, we would get an instant channel strike here on YouTube, which is why the original broadcaster didn't put it out there.
Okay.
They won't allow that stuff to be shown. And, I'm very ambivalent with regards to that. I don't think it's a good idea to sweep stuff under the carpet and not give people any exposure to it because, oh, you might, cause them anxiety or distress. But either way, we can't play that type of content. I doubtful that I would anyway. But I support other people having the opportunity to do that. So let's jump right into our main topic, which is ICE's progress in capturing criminal aliens, deporting them. So the issue of illegal immigration has been at the forefront of American consciousness for a few years now, thanks to the Biden admin that we just went through, but never more intensely in the months since President Trump's return to office. The media likes to frame this as simply a matter of a policy difference. But for those of us who value law and order, national sovereignty, the safety of our communities, the safety of our young women, it's something far more fundamental. So what we're witnessing isn't just a border crisis. This has been an invasion that directly threatens the fabric of our society, the rule of law, the very safety of our families. When millions of people, and who knows what the real number is, but it's, estimated could be somewhere between 20 and 50 million illegals in the country now. When that happens and they bring drugs and crime, they compete for jobs and resources, it's driving, rent prices through the roof. People say it's compassionate to turn a blind, or it's not compassionate to turn a blind eye. It's suicidal. It's self-inflicted genocide on our part. But so today's topic's pretty crucial for every American and every American patriot to understand. So ICE's enhanced enforcement activities aren't just about numbers. This is about restoring the sovereignty of our nation. If you don't have a border, you don't have a nation. And protecting American citizens. The left likes to say things like, well, illegal aliens commit these crimes at far lower rates than Americans. Well, an illegal alien who should not be in our country, who murders somebody like Lake and Riley, that was a preventable death. And the people who let that scumbag into our country then essentially have blood on their hands. So, under the previous administration, the ICE agents had their hands tied. We've had J.J. Carroll on a bunch of times, who's a good friend of mine, former CBP special agent for 24 years. And it was so frustrating for him. He had to retire watching dangerous criminals being released into our communities. But thankfully, that's changing now. We're seeing results. So we're going to examine some of these concrete steps that are being taken to restore law and order in our immigration system, I should say. But the bottom line is pretty simple. A nation without borders isn't a nation at all. And the primary duty of government is to protect its citizens. That means enforcing our immigration laws without apology and in ensuring that those who come here do so legally, respecting our laws from the very first interaction with our country. So, Sam, I'm going to come to you first before I go to the first video. I want to hear your 30,000-foot view, and then, Jeff, I want to hear your 30,000-foot view as far as ICE's progress and your thoughts on what kind of a job they're doing and what else we need to do in addition to what they're already doing.
Well, I don't know what news you guys are privy to, but I see the stuff on the internet, and I'm guessing you see the same thing. And, I listen to Homan and, to me, these guys are doing a great job. Could they do more? I would have absolutely no idea. But I think they're doing a great job. I see the videos. I know you guys have seen them where you got Hillary Clinton talking about, how we need to secure the borders. You have Bill Clinton talking about the same thing, and we need to deport these people. You had Obama saying the same thing, and all of these people deported people, right? This is all Democrat stuff, and they all deported way more than Trump. But all of a sudden, when Trump does it, he's some kind of bad guy, I don't understand how the party shifted to a communist party so fast. But that being said, since you said it best, is it the job of government to protect the citizens of the country?
Federal, especially.
And if you break a law, do you go to jail?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, wait. They open the borders and they let 20 or 30 million people in illegally. That's a crime against the United States.
It is.
Couldn't Trump round them all up and arrest them because you committed a crime?
Well, you would think so. And I want to clarify one thing for you, Sam. we support Tom Homan 100%. I talk to Tom Homan on a semi-regular basis. Like I said, we've had him on Survival Dispatch News. We participated in his Border 911 program. I'm not criticizing Tom at all. Tom is extremely frustrated at the limited resources that he has at his disposal. We're at 100,000 illegals have been deported so far, and the goal was significantly higher than that. So we love Tom Homan. I'm a friend of Tom Homan's. We support Tom Homan. My comments were just directed at the resources have not been given to him to do the job that he needs to do.
Okay. No, I don't argue it. I mean, I'm sure it's a massive job. I mean, you're talking about removing 20 or 30 million people. Give me a break. How many people is that going to take to do that? 1 million? Is anybody going to give him 1 million people to remove 20 or 30 million? The point is, it's not about him. The question is, if a politician commits a crime, could they be arrested for it?
They should be.
Okay. So why isn't it being done? I think it shouldn't even be arrest like with police. I think this should be military. This is treason.
It is treason. No question at all. And I think that they keep doing these things, Sam, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we've let these people get away with whatever they want to do for so long that they think that I can go ahead and do it. Nobody's going to touch me. And there's no consequences.
There never has been. Jeff, this is your show, right? I mean, tell me, why can't Trump just bring in the military and arrest Biden, the whole crew? Why can't that be done? Because they did commit crimes.
Well, if there's a gray area here, and
there's no gray. Is it legal to let all these people in?
Actually, yes, there is a gray area. The president has latitude over the policy. And what Biden did was he changed it to where he said, you can come into the country and you can apply for asylum. It used to be you had to apply for asylum at a border crossing point, and you had to go through these procedures. And just like Trump had put in the Remain in Mexico policy, where it says, if you want to come in, if you want to apply for asylum, great, but you got to stay in Mexico while we adjudicate it. That was his choice. Biden could say, okay, yeah, you can apply for asylum, but we'll let you stay in here until it's adjudicated. Technically, that was within his authority as the chief executive when it comes to how to enforce the law. In his case, just like a judge can, someone, gets convicted of breaking into a house, a judge can give him probation instead of hard time. There's leeway in the law all over the place. And, rightfully so. You don't want to treat a kid who shoplifts, a pack of gum from a dime store like the same as you do a bank robber. They're both theft, but there's latitude there. Thing is, what the Democrats did is they just said everybody come in. There's still technically illegal aliens and asylum and applying for asylum and all that, but their idea was to clog the system, which is what they're doing.
I think there's two ways to look at this. I think you're both right. I mean, in Jeff's case, he's referring to Title 42 that the Biden admin threw out in addition to 94 other executive orders to, make it possible to open the border without being exposed to, say, criminal charges. But on the other side, Sam, what they have done is absolutely 110% treason. And how we deal with that is a whole other matter. So we have a mutual friend, Todd Callender, very notorious attorney. I've told this story many times, so I'm going to keep it really, really short, but I have a 100-page document PDF where one of Todd's researchers FOIA'd the crap out of the federal government and other branches, by the way. Not one person in the Biden admin had a valid oath of office. So that means that none of them were notarized or they didn't have a sworn statement attached to them. When Todd told me that his researcher discovered this, I said, well, I'm not an attorney. What does that mean? He said if they had a valid oath of office and they committed treason, they could then face the death penalty. But because they don't have a valid oath of office, they're essentially imposters. And the maximum penalty for being an imposter of a government official is 5 years in prison. This whole thing was engineered, many levels above Joe Biden, of course. So I get passionate like you as well, Sam. I'm like the same way. Like, let's just arrest them all and throw them out of the country.
Chris, I mean, then, I got to go back to the abortion thing and change my views. I think when it comes to politicians, we should be able to have late-term abortions up to the age of 90. Any arguments there?
That's the comment of the week so far, Sam. Well done. That was really, really good. So listen, we've got another video queued up here, and we're not going to watch the whole thing because it's fairly long, but this is ICE Acting Director Todd Lyons recapping his House Appropriation Committee testimony. And I'll give you the Cliff Notes version because I'm not going to play the whole video, but essentially he provides a detailed recap of recent testimony, and he discusses the agency's operational priorities, budgetary needs, recent enforcement successes. He emphasizes ICE's commitment to targeting criminal aliens, not just illegal aliens, and dismantling these transnational criminal organizations. So TDA, MS-13, Sinaloa Cartel, those sorts of organizations. And pardon me. And he's also very focused on protecting American communities, much like Tom Homan. He then goes on to outline to Congress, because they control the purse, of course, how additional funding will enhance their efforts and improve everything from the quality of the detention facilities to the numbers, the absolute numbers that they can get a hold of. So he also addresses a number of questions with regards to local enforcement, cooperation with local agencies, sanctuary jurisdictions, so on and so forth. I'm just going to play a portion of this, and then I'll give you both a chance to take a swing at it.
I was watching your hearing this morning, which compared to the secretaries was kind of like an afternoon tea. Everybody was almost getting along. And it was the shortest hearing, I think, in history.
It was very quick, but I was able to answer the questions that they wanted.
Yeah. I
was able to really highlight the great work that the men and women of ICE are doing, and the fact that ICE is totally open to transparency. I know, obviously, Delaney Hall came up.
Mm-hmm.
ICE recognizes that there is congressional oversight, but like I said, and when I read them back, the Appropriations Act from 2020, there's specific provisions, and if you do it the right way, present ID, go through screening, there's no problem with that.
Well, the Democrats didn't seem to think that they needed to do that. Listen to this question from Lauren Underwood, Democrat from Illinois. Listen to
Last week, ICE blocked members of Congress from conducting an unannounced inspection at the Delaney Hall facility in New Jersey. That, too, appears to be in violation of federal law, which clearly states that we have the right to enter ICE facilities even if we show up unannounced.
So was that an unannounced inspection, or was that grandstanding?
You know, it was unannounced, but I would say the way they took it, it was grandstanding. So I did answer the ranking member's question.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't block them. They did get a tour. I'm actually pleased to say that one of the members came out and was surprised at how well kept the facility was. But there's a certain section of the statute. We can't have mixed parties. Local officials can't attend. The mayor tried to come in.
Yeah.
They walked in while tailgating another vehicle. That's not the right way to do it. And that's what ICE is saying. We're all about transparency. And we appreciate Secretary Noem today. She was really representing the men and women of ICE. She has our back. The president has our back. All ICE agents and officers ask for it is to be treated with respect and follow the own Appropriations Act that they have from Congress.
So I'm going to stop it there again, just because it's a longer video. Sam, I'll go to you first this time. What were your thoughts when you saw these Congress critters barging, through ICE? I don't know if you saw the video or not. There's actually a video of what the one Congress lady who's fairly large body slams a 110-pound girl who's an ICE agent. I mean, it was ridiculous.
So I kept looking for that. I never saw that because everything was too congested in there, and I never could see it. But are you telling me that she actually did? You have that clip?
Yeah, it's on X. We can probably find it for you.
So I do have to ask you this because, I've never had a job where I work for somebody. I really don't understand, having to answer to anybody. Certainly, when you have all these people showing up, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm an ICE agent, I realize that they're working for the federal government. They have a boss, but the job is to fix the problem that the last administration, this massive problem they put together. And now you have these people that are just coming out and protesting against what you're doing. But here's the comical part. If it was Biden's administration, he was doing this, nobody would say a word, right?
Right.
Okay. And if Biden came out and said, we're going to do an audit on the federal government, we want to find out where all the waste is, nobody would have said a word. It just, whenever Trump does something, it all of a sudden becomes this massive problem. So if you're telling me she really did body slam him?
She was a 110-pound girl. And I don't know what the congresswoman weighs, but she's large. Yeah. Yeah, probably double that.
And did they arrest her?
Not yet. So the last I heard was that Kristi Noem announced that they were investigating it. And then, of course, dollar store Obama, Hakeem Jeffries, went on to say that if anybody tried to arrest any Congress members, that there would be hell to pay.
Oh, you know what? No. So look, here, I mean, to me, you're trying to do a job. Now you have all these people in there disrupting it. So they should have just asked them all to leave. Obviously, they probably did. They didn't leave. Then what they should have done was snatch them by the hair, drag them down, cuff them, put their knee in the back, maybe around the neck. That always seems to work pretty good. Throw them in a freaking squad car and leave them there for a couple hours before they take them in. No, look, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm over it, right? So to me, it doesn't really matter. Now, I know those law enforcement agents would probably get in some trouble. Okay, so I wouldn't really keep my job very long. But at the end of the day, who's going to stop this nonsense?
That's the $64,000 question.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, if there's no consequences, it's going to continue. End it. That's it. End it.
By the way, Jeff, Sam is not usually full of piss and vinegar to this extent, but I give you kudos for it. Jeff, Sarah's got a question. She's one of our really devout followers from California. She's awesome. She writes some really long, very thoughtful comments, and she's asking what we can do other than calling our legislators. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think one thing we need to do is let ICE know that we support them. If you see Border Patrol, if you see immigration people out there, stop them, say, appreciate what you're doing. Because all they get is when they go into these communities and they're picking up these illegals, and they have the local whack jobs cussing at them, screaming at them, yelling at them. Yeah. They need someone to say, hey, we got your back, you're good, and we appreciate it, and keep going. Godspeed.
That's good, Jeff. Absolutely, they would appreciate that. Well said. So moving on to the next piece here, and this is from ICE. And if you're on X, I highly suggest you follow ICE. So it's at ICE GOV, all one word, no spaces or anything like that. So this is pretty interesting. And I don't know if you caught this or not, Jeff. I know that Sam did, because Sam's already got an article up on yournews.com. But 3 large synthetic drug production labs in Sinaloa were dismantled, with narcotics and chemical precursors seized in an operation led by ICE, and investigations vetted unit within the government of Mexico called the Fiscalía General de la República, Agencia de Investigación Criminal. That's as best as I could do on the pronunciation. Supported by the Mexican Secretaría de la Defensa Nacional and Secretaría de Marina. So you can clearly tell I'm not bilingual, but the post from ICE basically details this really significant operation. And these labs, what they're doing is they're taking the precursors that China's sending over and converting it to fentanyl. And it's, like I said, it's really interesting that ICE was leading this on the other side of the border. And this is the first that I've seen as far as public coverage on this is concerned. Sam, what do you think about our, agents not just being south of the border gathering intel, but actually getting involved in the interdiction of this stuff?
I think it's well needed. I think this should have happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Okay. I mean, fentanyl kills more people in the United States than anything else, right? And the only thing we've had is open borders and fentanyl coming through. So I'm going to be a conspiracy theorist and go out on a limb and say the reason that the Biden administration approved it is because they were getting funneled money through some back door. Jeff, any argument there? I mean, why else would you do it? Okay. And I'm not doing
well, you follow the votes, or you follow the money. And
That's it.
votes get you money. And I think the whole thing with the illegals is they want to flood the country with the illegals and then say, well, there's too many here to deport. We might as well make them all citizens. And
how
then
convenient.
have a permanent voting, Democrat voting class.
Due process. So as I mentioned, Sam's got an article up on U News, and this is a fantastic article, by the way. And is the byline here: DOJ brings first ever terrorism charges against Sinaloa cartel members following fentanyl seizure, which is related to these labs. Sam, it's your website, and you sent me this article. Thank you very much. Go ahead and describe this article from the high level standpoint.
Well, I mean, first of all, I didn't write the article. We're a news outlet, so there's like thousands of articles on this website, and most of them are local news somewhere. But I had a question in regards to, to me, the problem. If you want to solve the problem coming across the border, it's the cartel that's the problem, and Mexico's afraid of these people, right? And rightly so. I mean, this is like organized crime at the highest level, and these people have tanks. They have grenade launchers. They're like their own military. The only way to me that I see this being solved is through military authorization. I mean, honestly, the military should be going in there and just blowing up all these labs and hunting everybody down like a pack of dogs and executing all of them. The hell with due process. They're not even our citizens. And I don't really think you're going to get any pushback from Mexico. I don't think they'll say a word. You're doing them a favor. You're cleaning everybody up. So to me, what they're doing here, it had to be done, but it should be done on a large scale effort. I'm talking about tanks. I'm talking about drones coming in, drone strikes. Any argument, Jeff, on that one? I mean, if you want to solve the problem, you get rid of the problem. There's no more problem.
There's that, but also you're assuming the Mexicans want to get rid of the problem 100%. They're all getting money here. They're getting paid.
I understand.
All these corrupt politicians are getting rich. They don't want this to go away. This is the gravy train.
Well, they're getting rid of the competition.
Maybe.
Right? I mean,
if you're a politician, say you're the governor of a Mexican state, or you're the head of the state police in Sinaloa, and you're getting paid $1 million a year, do you want someone to go out and kill the guy who's paying you $1 million a year? No, you want the $1 million a year.
Major conflicts of interest.
Yeah, sure. Huge conflicts. And that's the reason you pay off officials is because it freaking works. Bribery works every time it's used.
It's not bribery, it's a campaign contribution. It's not bribery.
But it's, if you look at the Cali cartel, basically paid every cop, every taxi driver, every hotel clerk in Cali for years. Nobody can move into that town that they didn't know about in about 2 seconds.
You guys are killing me tonight. You're awesome. This is a great comment, by the way, from Archangel, directly related to this. El Chapo's son just made a deal to get 17 of his family members into the country. So I bet some of this info came from what he supplied.
Yes.
High probability. Great comment, Archangel. So I'm just watching the time here. I'm trying to keep us inside our 1 hour. So I want to bring up something from another angle, and that's with regards to these sanctuary cities. So these sanctuary policies, let's call them, regardless of what level they're at, they put innocent residents, criminal aliens, and law enforcement all at risk, while increasing taxpayer costs to, re-apprehend violent criminal aliens. And if you click through on this and go to ICE's website, they explain how sanctuary city policies and counties and even sanctuary states negatively impact public safety and government resources. And the article, again, when you click through, states that such policies endanger, in addition to all that, innocent residents by releasing these criminal aliens back into the communities repeatedly. And then the criminal aliens put themselves at risk by forcing ICE to conduct more dangerous at-large arrests rather than controlled custody transfers. And then, of course, they endanger law enforcement officers who have to repeat these apprehension efforts over and over and over again. The number, though, that really stands out on this infographic, if you have an uncooperative jurisdiction, say Denver, Colorado, Boston, Los Angeles, wherever, it takes 8 to 10 ICE agents to execute the same thing that 2 ICE agents can do in a cooperative jurisdiction. Sam, I have a feeling you're going to go off the reservation on this one, but I support that 100%. This sanctuary BS is not consistent with the Constitution. The Constitution clearly states that all matters regarding immigration fall under the purview of the federal government. And, when I took Civics 101, I was basically told that, federal law trumps state law, trumps county law, trumps city bylaws. So this is a huge waste and danger. Go ahead and take a swing at this one, Sam.
Well, a couple things. Number one, if you're not going to cooperate, would you be aiding and abetting?
I would say so.
Okay, so why wouldn't somebody just walk in and snatch the mayor by the back of the head and bring him to the ground and cuff him and drag him out and, leave him away from his office for, 6 months or so, maybe put him in isolation for a while, let him understand what he's doing, maybe put him in with some MS-13 people, say, here's your bros. That's number one. Number two, if you can't do that, why don't you just tell them, fine, you're paying for it. Here's the bill. And if you don't take it, we're seizing assets. Okay. So you are paying for it. Congratulations. And by the way, we're sending 10,000 men there next week. Should be about $40 million in bill.
I guarantee you that if Sam had my watch that is constantly going off saying it's detected an abnormally high heart rate when I get pissed off about stuff, it would be going off the entire episode. Sam, don't get these Garmin watches. It'll drive you nuts.
Look, solve the problem. Solve the problem.
Put a little perspective on here. And the reason you can't do that is not helping is not against the law. There is no law that says you have to help law enforcement do their law enforcement job. You can't lie to them. You can't impede them, but you can just sit there and watch with your hand and twiddle your thumbs if you want to. And it works both ways.
They arrested him for not helping.
It works both ways, because if the federal government says, okay, we're going to ban AR-15s, and then you get these constitutional sheriffs who go, we're not going to arrest anybody for it. We're not going to help you do that. You're on your own, slick. So it does go both ways. But the way with these sanctuary cities, what you do is you say, look, you can either help us arrest them while they're already in jail, in your jail, or we're going to flood that neighborhood with striker assault vehicles and 150 guys in full tactical gear. Which is better for your for your community? Have it look like a war zone because you won't cooperate, or to arrest this guy at the jail when we know he's not armed, we know, and we can just basically, take him, put him in the back of the car, drive him to the detention facility, and then fly his ass out of here
without putting
in. Give them a choice where they can't accept. If they say you're flooding us with all these armed troops, it's like, then help us do it without the armed troops, because we're going to do it.
But before we move on, Jeff, good points, by the way. I do want to mention that we have a Supreme Court ruling that actually says law enforcement officers have no duty to protect you or intervene if you're in trouble. So while it would be a horrible thing to see, the Supreme Court has flat out said that the law enforcement agents, cops, have no constitutional duty to protect you at all.
So what's the purpose?
I don't remember what the background was to that Supreme Court case. It's been in place for many, many years. Listen, all the cops I know do not subscribe to that at all. And if I had to guess, and I'm guessing, don't quote me on this, it was probably some ACLU baloney. That would be my first guess, but we'll move on to the next one here, which speaks to the construction industry. So, and this is actually a pretty big problem here in Florida that's caused quite a few problems, not just recently, but over the years, where ICE would come along and ask everybody for their identification on a construction job site, and they'd, flee like cockroaches. But essentially this message from ICE is saying to employers, you got to get right with law and work site enforcement actions, they're not just about these illegal workers. They're also about criminal business owners hiring them. And then those businesses undercutting their competition by exploiting illegal alien labor, making it harder for legitimate businesses to stay afloat. And I've seen this firsthand here in Florida. So this message essentially from ICE is a pretty strong message to employers as far as work site enforcement actions. Basically, it emphasizes that these operations target not only unauthorized workers, but the business owners and executives who knowingly hire them. And the Post also points out the economic harm caused when businesses exploit illegal labor, specifically how they gain an unfair advantage over law-abiding competitors. Sam, you're here in the state of Florida, and I'm sure at some point in time you've heard this topic be brought up. But it seems to me that ever since we had 5 major hurricanes here in Central Florida in 0405, there's been a massive influx of illegal aliens working in the construction industry. One, because of the demand that was created by those hurricanes, but then everybody from up north decided to come to Florida because we've got no state income tax and all kinds of other reasons. And the construction industry can't keep up with the demand, whether it's for rentals or homes like standalone homes. I'm curious if you've heard anything in your part of the state with regards to this.
Well, I'm not that far away from you, but what I notice here is, obviously I don't know if they're illegals and I don't ask them, but I live where we have an HOA, and there's, the community uses a specific, company to cut the grass and hedges and trim the trees. And I mean, nobody speaks English. Okay. It's like they're all Hispanic. So, you have to conclude that there's got to be some people that are not citizens there. I mean, the question would be is who would they get to replace them? I don't have the answer to that. I just know it seems to me that every single place, that every community you're at, it looks like they're all the same people, and they're all about 5 foot tall, about 160 pounds.
You're on fire today. I love this, Sam. But legitimate point. So the problem is that we're all relatively the same age here, and we had VOTEC when we grew up, and now there's no such thing as VOTEC, at least not in the state of Florida that I'm aware of. And I don't know who would take those jobs, to be quite frank with you, because these kids have been sold this false bill of goods saying, well, go to college, accumulate a bunch of debt, get a degree in gender studies, and live happily ever after.
As a barista at Starbucks.
Right.
A confused barista.
You know what's crazy about that, though, is I want to say 15 years ago, maybe longer than that, Publix put out a policy where you can't even get hired at Publix without having a degree. So all those people who are running the cash and stocking the shelves all have college or university degrees.
And that's stupid.
I don't disagree.
100%
but
stupid.
What do you see in Arizona? I mean, you're a border state. Is the construction industry there dominated by illegals as well?
We've got, now some of them are illegals and some of them come up with work permits. They come up, they have, they work for companies, they do framing, and then, they go home. Especially the closer to the border you get, I mean, they go home at night. They just say, oh, I got a job on the American side. Okay. My brother is in construction. He's a carpenter, and he called me yesterday and we were talking. He was on his way to the store, but he was complaining that they had this crew of framers there and none of them spoke English, and he doesn't speak Spanish. And he says, I got one guy who speaks, who can translate for me, and he went to lunch and he hadn't come back yet. So he's like, so I got all these guys, says they're good at what they do. They know what but I can't tell them how high the window's got to be or how wide the opening's going to be. He says, because I don't speak Spanish and they don't speak English. And I said, they're illegals, because I'm sure they're all illegals. But, they hire a sub, and the sub is, the framing contractor, and then he hires them all.
I kid you not, late 80s, early 90s, we would be at Cashway, which was the biggest lumberyard in Dallas-Fort Worth back then, and they had multiple locations. And the illegals would be lined up across the entire front of the store. And this is before Lowe's and Home Depot. And $5 a day, many of those people would work for, and they would work their ass off. And what we typically found was their work ethic is outstanding, but 1 in 100 actually has any skills, like a skilled tradesman sort of thing. And even as recent as, so I sold my last place in Texas, 11 years ago now. And you could go to Lowe's or Home Depot and $20 a day, you could hire illegals. I didn't do it, but that's not my thing. But that's what the rate was back then. So speaking of which, I've got another article here, or post, I should say, from ice.gov on this very particular topic. So ICE agents served 187 notices of inspection to employers in the nation's capital last week to ensure businesses comply with the immigration employment laws. And this like short but significant ICE post that we're looking at basically announces what they did, that they're going to be doing more of it to verify that businesses are complying with the laws, and particularly regarding proper work authorization, documentation, I-9 processes, all the stuff that goes with that. So this is a pretty significant enforcement action focused on employers compliance, and it's going to spread across the entire country. And, you know, I was thinking to myself, this has good and bad implications, and I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for short-term pain for long-term gain. But I think this is important to us as, call it, traditional Americans, because we don't have uniformity across the country on this stuff. And I think we need to have some element of uniformity. I'd go back to Sam's comment, you know, do we have a nation? Like, if we're not going to enforce the laws, do we have a nation? If we don't enforce them in one jurisdiction or another, do we have a nation? Or do we just have a bunch of balkanized states? I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not, Sam, but you're welcome to.
Well, this is in the nation's capital, right? And so, you know, as I understand it, you know, people can get work visas to come here, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so, you know, like where you live, Jeff, how far are you from the border? You said they go right back across the border?
Well, sometimes when they'll live in Nogales, Sonora. They may work in Nogales, Arizona. And then, they come across in the morning, they go to work, and they go home they go home at the end of the day.
Okay. So if they have a work visa, there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
I mean,
you'll get some that have border cards so they can cross. If they have they just call them border cards. They could come and go back and forth. Yeah, I have no problem with that. I mean, if there's a labor shortage and they want to work and someone wants to pay them, yeah, why not? But but they're still paying taxes and everything else too.
Exactly what I'm wondering, because, you know, look, everybody's all about not having open borders, but there are some jobs that Americans don't want to do, right? And, you know, it's just the way it is. Now, I don't live in a state where, you know, they could go home. I mean, we have the ocean surrounding us everywhere, right? But so the question is, you know, who wants to get out there at 93 degrees and, you know, 80% humidity and, you know, cut grass? And, you know, there's a demand, but you're not going to get people to do it for $5 and $6 an hour. But these people, I'm assuming, are illegals. And so I guess if it's convenient for us, then that's okay. But here's the thing. How do they become legal to be able to do that? Is there a way?
Yeah, I don't know the process, but we used to have guest worker programs where, you know, you would have a sponsor, a company would come in and say, I need to hire 200 guys. And they would hire 200 guys for a season. You know, maybe they're, you know, picking vegetables, doing whatever. And when the season's over, they go back home.
Yeah, seasonal agricultural workers. And we've used them for decades here in the Southeast. But Sam, you hit it on the head when you qualified the statement. Not only do Americans not want to do the jobs, but in reality, they don't want to do the job for $5 an hour. And why would they? You know, and that's the harm that's caused to our economy, because when we all grew up, people who worked in the trades made good money. They had their own home, they owned homes, they had vehicles, and they were good paying jobs. And we've just driven that down. And
inflation is what it was, because when you were making that kind of money, you were paying 50 cents or $1 for gas. You were paying 50 cents for a loaf of bread, right? So when I was 21 years old, 22, I think I made $250,000. At 22, it was like 40 years ago almost, okay? And that was when, you know, gas was $1. That was when, you know, bread was like 50 cents. Milk was $1 a gallon. I mean, you couldn't drop $5,000. It was almost impossible, you know? And today, you know, the money supply became tighter because the government took it all. You know, they created regulations where you couldn't get your hands on it, and they just printed, you know, giving it away to USAID people, you know, where they're putting it all these NGOs, and then it's funneling back to them. Everybody saw that whole thing where with what's his name, Jesse Waters, where Elon Musk said to him, 90% of the money stays in DC. Money laundering at its finest. There better be people that go to jail for that. I mean, give me a freaking break. So I don't even know what to say except, you know, the reason we're in the mess we're in today is because of politicians. They're the direct cause of it. And as far as I'm concerned, there shouldn't even be a Washington. I mean, centralized governing does not work. I think it needs to be left to the states. We just need a bunch of accountants counting the money for the tariffs and making sure that all the roads are done and that, you know, we have a military. But I don't really see any big need for it. And I mean, just it seems to me that if you give people the ability to screw you, they will.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm here from the government to help you.
Yeah.
So I want to speed things up a little bit. We're going to end up running a couple minutes, and that's okay. But I want to try and hold it to the hour as best as possible. So Pete, the question down below there is we had a lot of people request that we cram as much as we can into 1 hour. It's business 101. Play to your audience. If your audience asks you for that, then that's probably what you should deliver. So we're just trying to honor that. But so this video with Kristi Noem is essentially about what happened at Delaney Hall and, you know, how it wasn't oversight on the part of these members of Congress, who, by the way, are not above the law. You know, it was obstruction. And my personal opinion is it's pretty disgraceful what those elected officials did, regardless of the heat of the moment, adrenaline, whatever. They acted like a bunch of buffoons, number one. Number two, they're fighting to protect illegal aliens. And we're going after the really bad ones right now. So these are murderers, rapists, gang members, you know, drug dealers. And we're going to put their well-being over the safety of law-abiding Americans. Like, that just doesn't square for me at all. And Kristi Noem's fairly religious. She's a Christian. And it's not this video, but it's another one. She quotes Romans 1:7, where essentially the Bible says it's the government's purpose is to protect its citizens, which is exactly what you just said, Sam, to a T. So this video is 2 minutes and 17 seconds. I probably won't play the whole thing, but I'll play enough that it gives some content for both of you to comment on.
What happened last Friday was we had members of Congress assaulting law enforcement officers. They were cooperating with criminals to create criminal acts, and then they're saying that they were providing oversight. This wasn't oversight. This was committing felonies. This was going out and attacking people who stand up for the rule of law, and it was absolutely horrible. I can't believe they act like this and then they defend it. And then they're doing these acts of violence to get people out of detention centers that are rapists, that are murderers, that are people that are foreign terrorist organizations that have been out there victimizing our communities in the United States of America. What are they trying to do? Release these people back into the country so that there could be more Lake and Rileys, so there can be more Jocelyn Nungries? I just don't understand what their point is. They have completely lost their minds.
Amen to that. Sam?
Well, first of all, I agree with Kristi. I mean, she says it very eloquently, but, you know, you got to ask yourself, why are these people doing this? I mean, what's the upside? This is what I've been trying to grasp. You know, like, the Democratic Party is not the Democratic Party. It's actually the Communist Party of the United States. That's exactly what it is. And the fact that these people are acting the way they're acting, trying to pull criminals out of a detention center that have committed crimes against American citizens, and they're acting like these people are better than their own people they're supposed to represent, just absolutely blows me away. And you know, look, to me, I believe that, you know, there should always be freedom of speech, and, you know, you should be able to act accordingly. But have you ever noticed when conservatives get together, they don't burn buildings down, they don't destroy, but when these people get together, it's all about destruction. And therein lies the problem, because, as I've always said, conservatives own businesses, liberals don't own businesses, they just burn them down. So to me, the only thing that you need to give these people is exactly what they're giving, right? I mean, I just don't get how people could get away with this. That just blows my mind.
Totally. Jeff, you must be on mute, Jeff.
It doesn't look like he. Oh, maybe he is.
When I was in college, I had a professor said ownership is the ability to limit access to a property or product. You only own your car because you can keep somebody else from driving it. If you couldn't, what's the point of owning a car? It's only your house because you can keep other people from occupying it. So why in the hell it's our country? We have a right and a duty to keep people from just coming in willy-nilly. Otherwise, it's not our country. And the Democrats go against anything Trump says. They say we're mad because Trump is doing bad things. Well, no, they're only bad things because Trump is doing them.
That's
if
it.
the Democrat was doing them, they wouldn't be a bad thing at all. So let's get that right. So that's why they're doing this, because Trump is deporting criminal aliens. Well, he's doing it, therefore it must be bad. So we are for keeping criminal aliens. Their logic, it is Trump derangement syndrome. Anything he is for, they are against. And I think he's brilliant because he's taking all the 90 sides on these 90-10 issues, like criminal aliens and men playing women's sports and that kind of nonsense. And as long as they do that, they're going to, they're basically they're pouring gas over themselves and frustrated that the lighter won't flame. Let them burn themselves to the ground.
Process of natural selection, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, we're running a little long on time, so I'm not going to play this video, but I'm going to throw a couple posts at you all to comment on here. This first one is the ICE acting director, Todd Lyons, escorting this person that ICE Boston arrested, and he's a convicted child sex abuser. And he's also responsible for a hit and run. And then there's another guy that had a whole bunch of charges. I think they got 3 of them in this particular raid. It was interesting that the director was out there in the field. I like seeing that sort of stuff, leading by, example. And then the next one here kind of speaks to the severity of this stuff. So in Dallas, here's an arrest of a Venezuelan fugitive wanted for direct involvement in 4 homicides. And to your point, both of you, this is back to what on earth are they defending here? What they're defending is they figure if they can get these people due process, that there's no way that we can give tens of millions of them due process, and they get their way. They get to keep the illegals in the country. They keep the illegals in the country. It makes up for the fact that they don't have children. So they have to import these voters if they're ever going to survive for any period of time. They either indoctrinate our kids and or flood the country with illegals, which is what they're doing. There's a lot more information on these 2 posts, but again, we're running tight on time. Sam, I'm going to go to you first. I mean, these are hardened criminals. These are bad people, child sex abusers, murderers. I mean, who wants them in your community or country?
That goes back to the same thing we just talked about, and Jeff just added to. What's the upside to these people doing this? I'm talking to the Democrats, and like to his point. I mean, if you can figure out a way to get it where they get due process, and you have to get due process to 20 million people, then you'll never be able to get rid of them all. But I think that this is really going to be the end of the Democratic Party, at least for a long time. I mean, because the only direction they have is oppose Trump. And I mean, to the point of if Trump balanced the budget and then took us to where we had 37 trillion in debt to 0, okay, and everybody was flourishing with money, somehow they would oppose that.
No kidding. Yeah,
you're muted again.
They would be saying, why are all those people missing out on those interest payments on that national debt? How about people who want to buy T-bills?
Yeah, right. So it's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It's too much for the mind to understand because it makes absolutely no sense, right? It's like talking to a retard. You can't figure out what they're saying. Yeah. You have no idea how they're coming to these conclusions because they don't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. I've got some concluding thoughts that I want to share with everybody, and y'all are welcome to comment them as well. But what we're seeing with these enhanced ICE operations basically is a return to sanity. You just said it, Sam. Sanity and the rule of law. And, for years under the previously installed administration, we all sat here watching in horror as our immigration system was deliberately dismantled. And there's no other way to describe it other than an orchestrated invasion of our country. We used the word invasion so many times the past 4 years. We couldn't even count how many times we've used it. So, and during that 4 years, by the way, ICE agents were completely handcuffed by policies that prevented them from doing their jobs. And their morale was so low. And that's directly from JJ Carroll and others that I've talked to. But here's the thing that the mainstream media is not telling y'all out there in the audience. The vast majority of ICE operations aren't some random sweeps or family separations, as they want you to believe. They're targeted actions against individuals who've already committed serious crimes beyond their immigration violations. Again, we're talking child predators, drug traffickers, gang members, violent offenders that should have never been allowed in our country in the first place. And, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about hating immigrants. Legal immigrants who respect our laws and assimilate to our values. If you come here, when in Rome, do as the Romans, and contribute to our society, have always been welcome in America. That's a hallmark of America. And many of those immigrants who came through Ellis Island in the past after the First and Second World Wars, they learned English. They embraced our culture. They didn't take a dime of government assistance. There's a big difference between immigration and invasion. And what we've seen these days is completely different, right? Organized caravans funded by globalist interests, military-age men from countries that hate America, complete disregard for our sovereignty as a nation. And who ends up paying the price? Well, all of us as working class Americans. And it's got to end. And thank God we got the right guy in the White House at this particular point in time. So the cartel operations that we're seeing dismantled are responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans. And that's just the fentanyl poison. That's not hyperbole. It's the deadliest drug in American history, bar none. And when the DOJ finally starts treating these cartels like the terrorist organizations they are, which is slowly happening, that's not extremism. It's common sense. And employers who knowingly hire illegal workers, we've covered that. Communities, Texas, Jeff State, Arizona, and even states that are far away from this, like Ohio and Maine, have been transformed overnight by this massive influx of unvetted migrants. Look at the Haitians in Indiana who were taking people's pets, cats and dogs, and skinning them and barbecuing them in their driveways, for crying out loud. The videos are absolutely horrendous. And the strain on our resources is where I'm going to end this and then give both y'all a chance to kind of tie it up. But there's a big cost to this. So the last number that I saw said that if you total federal, state, and local expenditures on illegal aliens, that it's around $450 billion a year. If they're saying that it's $450 billion a year, I would hazard to guess that it's at least double that, and that it's $900 billion a year. Go ahead and give me your closing thoughts on this topic, Sam.
So that's what the government comes out and says, that this is what the cost for the American taxpayer.
Correct.
450 billion. Well, we already know that they're off on everything. Okay. All right. The job numbers. Oh, we added new jobs. Turns out that there was less, right? I mean, so they lie about everything. So look, everybody here is fiscally responsible. Everybody here pays their bills. Everybody understands what it's like to be fiscally responsible. And just the fact that the government is actually letting these people in tells you that they don't give a rat's ass about us. Okay. The end. Am I right? Okay. So as far as I'm concerned, this is what all needs to be fixed. I realize you could only do so much because we're in a, what is this? Not a democracy, but what's the word? A constitutional republic, right?
Representative
All right. It seems to me there's faster ways to fix things. They're small and they move really quick, but I don't want to go there. I just want to say that it's kind of, we have to be the embarrassment to the world.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have to just laugh. If you're in another country and you're watching this happen and you're watching us arguing over pronouns, you got to go, what the hell is wrong with these people? Right. They've completely diverted everything to basically make Americans hate Americans. Right. We're opposing each other, whereas we should be working together. And they did it really effectively. So let's just pray that with all this money laundering that's been coming through USAID, let's pray that they could follow all this money. And Jeff, I have no idea if they can or they can't. I'm assuming that when money goes from one place to another, it gets tracked, right? And it has to end up somewhere. Who picked up that money? Yeah. And hopefully when we go to the next elections, there won't be anybody there. So we'll need new people to come in and then we can pick the right people. Right? Because most of them have to have been part of this. Republicans, Democrats, right?
Yep.
So, the question is Bondi going to be able to do something like this? Are they going to have the fortitude to be able to arrest these people? Because I would assume there's going to be an absolute boatload.
You would think so. Jeff, do you want to add your comments to that, please?
Well, on the immigration issue, especially when it comes to the whole due process nonsense, I looked at it this way. As Americans, we got no due process when these people were brought in. We didn't. There was no background checks. There was nothing that we had any idea who these people were. Even when they found out they were criminals, they let them in anyway. So if we got no due process when they came in, they shouldn't get any damn due process when we kick them out.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
I agree.
So I want to just give a quick message to our audience. We want to hear from you guys and gals. We've got some very loyal listeners and followers that are kind of the backbone of the, survival dispatch community. And many of you have shared your own experiences with the immigration crisis in your communities. I want to acknowledge some of those today, this evening. Mike from Arizona wrote to me last week about his experience as a rancher near the border. He described finding backpacks, water bottles, even identification documents from countries as far away as China and Syria in the past on his property when the gate was wide open. But his cattle have been scattered by groups crossing illegally. And even to this day, even though things have dramatically changed, he no longer feels safe leaving his wife alone at their homestead. It's a fairly rural, remote location. And this is the reality that many Americans are living near the border and have lived, for a number of years now. Sarah from Maine shared how her small towns changed dramatically after several hundred asylum seekers were relocated there with little warning or preparation. It caused a tremendous strain on local services. Housing costs have now skyrocketed, which is the story across the entire country. School systems struggling trying to accommodate children who speak a dozen different languages. It's not one or two languages. It's a dozen different languages. These aren't statistics. Like, this is, profoundly changing American communities. And then John, a police officer from California, described his frustration at arresting the same criminal aliens repeatedly because sanctuary policies prevent cooperation with ICE. He had one guy, multiple Dewey convictions, finally got deported after killing a local teenager in a drunk driving incident. But that tragedy could have been completely prevented if his department was allowed to cooperate with ICE. So, these stories matter, and that represent that there's a real cost of these failed immigration policies that we're going to be feeling for a long, long time. So again, I'd like to hear from you in the audience, any firsthand accounts of the immigration issue and how it's affected you. So as we wrap up today's discussion, I don't want to lose sight of what's at stake. This just isn't about statistics or policies. It's about the very future of our republic, the safety of our families, and the preservation of our American Christian culture, which, whether somebody's secular or not, even, agnostic and atheist Americans still profess to believe in the same values that Christians do. Surprise, surprise. The nation was founded on Christian values and beliefs. So here's the key takeaways. Sanctuary city policies don't protect communities. They endanger them. Workplace enforcement isn't just about the workers. It's about employers who knowingly break the law and put law-abiding businesses in a bad situation. The cartels, trafficking humans in particular and drugs across the board, these are criminal organizations that should be treated with the utmost disdain. And finally, supporting strong immigration enforcement is not anti-immigrant. It's pro-legal immigration and pro-American sovereignty. So we not only have a right to be concerned about these things, but we actually have a responsibility. So in closing, if you find any of the information we provide, I should say, valuable, and you want to keep getting these types of broadcasts, do me a favor, go to patreon.com/survival dispatch or survivaldispatchnews.com. And that's our Substack. Sign up for the Guardian program. It's $9.99 a month or $95 a year. You get 2.5 months for free. You get all of our daily situation reports. You get an invite to our Signal chat. Jeff will tell you insane volume of information that goes through there. You also get all 49 of our Survival Dispatch Insider e-magazines. 37 of them are for sale at $10 a piece. It's $370 worth of e-magazines. If you had nothing but, and you got into an SHTF situation, an apocalyptic SHTF situation, you would have all the information that you need right there. You can go to survivaldispatchnews.substack.com/May, MAY 25, and that will get you a free 1-month membership to check out what the Guardian stuff's all about. I want to give a quick shout out to Astro Mom 1204, submitted yesterday's best news story, and that's on a Soros-backed DA, our favorite DAs, right? Gave community service to an unlicensed illegal alien who killed a young woman in a car crash, probation. And, you know, that's the type of community intelligence that Sam's platform brings to play, and that we all need to stay informed on this. And again, I'd like to thank Astro Mom for sharing that. We share each night that I host, at least, I share what I feel was a really good contribution the day before from one of our Guardians. She shared that over in our Signal chat. So anyway, tomorrow night's episode is going to be a barn burner. We've got Shannon Rich with us, pro MMA fighter. He was attacked by a knife wielding assailant, ended up shooting him at point blank range, 2 feet away, literally. He shot him with Pilgrim ammunition. Y'all know that James from Pilgrim and I are close friends. He doesn't pay me anything. I want to see him succeed because he's my friend, but he also has the best self-defense ammo out there, bar none. And when Shannon shot the guy in the neck from 2 feet away, it killed the guy instantly, obliterated the front of his neck, but did not exit out the back. There was zero danger to anybody else in the vicinity. And that's the whole claim to fame for Pilgrim ammo, is no over-penetration on record, at least to date. I want to thank all of our subscribers. We couldn't afford to spend countless hours doing this stuff, bringing you truthful news without your support. And, you know, this isn't just a podcast. It's a mission to preserve America, save our republic, you know, that we love so much for our children and grandchildren, including saving our American Christian culture. Sam, closing thoughts on your part, and then Jeff, you got final kick at the can tonight.
Well, you know, look, I'm glad you guys invited me here. I think this was a great discussion. When it comes to, you know, what I'm doing, you know, it's just to, you know, ultimately replace the legacy media, which we all know is going to be gone. And so, you know, if there are any of your people out there are interested in becoming citizen reporters, you know, you could always go to our website and go down to the bottom and click the Become a Citizen Journalist, fill out an application. If you're already at the city council meeting or the high school football game, you could report on it and get paid. That's how it works.
It's awesome. Kudos for building a fantastic resource. It's absolutely amazing.
Nice.
Jeff, final word goes to you.
Well, on the immigration issue, I'd just say, remember to let Border Patrol, ICE, let those guys know that you appreciate what they're doing, because all they're hearing from the media and everything else is negative stuff. And if you don't distrust the media enough, the old school media, you're not paying attention. So,
amen.
Because you knew Biden was mentally compromised, but apparently the thousands of reporters who work for the mainstream media had no clue. They were shocked that there was gambling going on at Rick's Cafe.
Shocked, I say. So true, so true. So we've got a great closing video tonight on PsyOps. I think it's 3.5 minutes longer, so it's a really good video. I'll be back tomorrow night. Between now and then, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and God bless America.
Let's tell a story about one of the greatest PSYOPs in history. The PSYOP that you deserve less and less every year, and that you should work harder and harder for less and less. The PSYOP that to be broke was the American way. The PSYOP that you should be lucky to pay your bills. The PSYOP that it's normal for prices to go up every year, forever. The PSYOP that it's normal to pay taxes. When you're born, death and taxes are the only certainty they would tell you. The PSYOP that you need to make $80,000 a year to take care of your family, then $100,000, and then $150,000. Now they tell you both you and your wife need to work to achieve financial freedom. So you hire the nannies, you hired the babysitters, you leave your community, you just don't have time for them anymore. Because you and your wife embarked on individual careers. These careers that took you away from your kids, your spouse, your home, your community, and they told you this was normal. It's totally normal to spend 2/3 of your time away from your family. It's normal to fight and get divorced, and it has nothing to do with the economic decisions and policies made by the government. None of it was normal. It was all nefarious, and it chipped away at what it meant to be an American. It chipped away at your self-esteem. It chipped away at your marriage, at your family, until you looked up and one day no one was married anymore. No one was succeeding unless they were heavily leveraged. One day you woke up and realized you don't recognize the world around you. Until Trump. President Trump came along and said, "This is your country, and that's your money." And he wouldn't back down. All the people that were destroying you came out and spoke against him. They went to great lengths to undermine his agenda. When President Trump hit his stride in 2019, they released a biological weapon that was the largest PSYOP in global history. COVID. They ran the scamdemic. They extorted trillions of dollars out of your economy. Then they stole your election overtly, hijacked your democracy, put up barbed wire fencing around your capital, and told you it was normal. During the next 4 years, they would unleash an invasion the likes of which no nation had ever seen. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of illegals poured in the United States of America and began gobbling up whatever remaining resources were in existence. You were deemed a domestic terrorist by those in power. They surveilled your phones, your computers. They surveilled your lives, but it wasn't enough to stop Donald Trump. When they couldn't undermine his campaign through the courts and lawfare, they eventually tried to kill him again and again and again, until that fateful day in November when President Trump and America reclaimed their sovereignty. With him, he brought the richest man on the planet, for free, named Elon Musk. They then began uncovering and publicizing all of fraud, theft, waste, and abuse of the American taxpayer. They have threatened him. They have threatened his family. Subversion is all they have left. Infiltration is all they have left. Their funding is drying up. This is your Liberation Day.